So Hezbollah recently released some footage of 2 FPV drone attacks that recently happened. We're going to be taking a look at that today, as well as make sure you stick around. I have an article from the Times of Israel on these FPV drones, so just some information on that for you, as well as an update from the Israeli Air Force on Lebanon. So make sure you stick around. All right, so this recent attack from Hezbollah. Hezbollah struck an Israeli Iron Dome short-range air defense launcher along the Israeli-Lebanese border with an FPV drone. When the IDF moved in to replace the damaged system, Hezbollah hit again, targeting the crew and the replacement launcher as it was being unloaded. So before we take a look at this footage, there is some debate on whether or not the first launcher that was hit, whether or not that was a decoy. So there's a couple of things you can look out for here as we go through this footage. One, in the first attack, it looks like there are some blue caps on the top of the launcher, which some people are saying indicates that it could be a decoy. In addition to that, there's no hydraulics, visible hydraulics in the center of the launcher kind of going up. So if you go and look at pictures of the Iron Dome launchers, they have like these silver hydraulics in the middle. You do not see those on this launcher that was hit. And then in the second attack, yes, you can clearly see the drone flying towards the crew. But on the right, some people pointing out that there is no visible cook-off. In other words, no burn marks from the first attack on like the walls and the ground. So those are just a couple of things to look out for here. And those are a few things that people are pointing out saying, hey, this could be a decoy. But if you ask me, it doesn't really matter if it's a decoy. Key point being that these drones are getting through. And of course, the second attack, not good to be losing soldiers and, casualties going up. Not good. Now, something I must add is that the FPV drones, as far as I know, are not new for Hezbollah. I think I've seen them being used somewhere around mid-2024. But the new part, as far as I understand, is the fiber optic cable that they're using with some of these attacks. So on the top there, as it gets closer, you'll see it there's like these blue caps. And then right in the center there should actually be vertical hydraulics going up, and you don't see them. They're silver, and you don't see them going up in the center. Okay, so that was the first attack. And the fiber optic cable helping with electronic warfare. So it's harder to interrupt these attacks when they use these cables. And there's the second attack here. So no burn marks, on the walls. If interceptors were cooking off, you'd expect a lot of burn marks, on the floor, on the walls, maybe. But again, if you ask me, irrelevant if it's a decoy, it is a win for Hezbollah if these drones are getting through. And some information I wanted to share with you on these FPV drones and how they affect the battlefield. This is from the Times of Israel from yesterday, Francis Moritz from the Times of Israel. Israel Hezbollah FPV killer drones. A new strategic constraint and an Iranian center of gravity. An asymmetrical war recentered on proximity. By the way, this article's quite long, but I'm just going to read you, I think it's like the first half and then the conclusion, just to give you some extra information. The confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah no longer resembles a conventional war between states. It pits a modern structured army against an armed non-state terrorist organization deeply rooted in its environment and supported by a regional power, Iran. In this type of conflict, technological superiority does not disappear, but it changes scale. It is no longer played out only in strategic depth, but within a much narrower space: proximity, terrain, and direct contact. This is precisely where the FPV drone imposes itself, literally first-person vision. In other words, the drone visually locks onto its future victim with remarkable precision, which is far from being a minor problem for the IDF. The FPV drone, a simple weapon perfectly suited to the terrain, a weapon that kills or maims with greater certainty. The FPV drone is piloted immersively all the way to impact. The operator sees in real time, adjusts, corrects, improvises. At short range, this capability provides remarkable precision and flexibility. In contact zones, the terrain of southern Lebanon, overlapping positions, tactical movements, it becomes a formidable tool. Capable of tracking a target, maneuvering around obstacles, striking vulnerable points, operating where conventional systems are less effective. Its very low cost further enhances its effectiveness. It becomes possible to multiply strikes, saturate an area, and wear down the adversary without major constraints. The FPV drone does not replace missiles or heavy systems, but it excels where everything is truly decided: close combat. For a modern army, it becomes a structural difficulty. For an army like Israel's, the challenge is not so much neutralizing these drones individually, but managing their omnipresence. Small, fast, flying low, difficult to detect, they partially evade conventional systems designed for heavier threats. They force the deployment of specific and often expensive countermeasures against a threat that itself is not expensive. Above all, they directly impact ground operations, slower troop movements, increased exposure during maneuvers, constant need for protection, continuous psychological pressure. The battlefield becomes more unstable, more fragmented, and more uncertain at extremely short range. And just the conclusion, the FPV drone is not the cause of the conflict, but it reveals its transformation. It embodies a low-cost war of proximity where precision and adaptation matter as much as raw power. In the Israel-Hezbollah context, it highlights a deeper reality: the difficulty for a modern army to neutralize a non-state adversary that is entrenched, externally supported, and operating within a constrained battle space. And behind this tactical reality lies a strategic truth. The core of the problem does not lie solely on the front line, but in the regional balance that allows this conflict to endure. The answer may ultimately be found in Tehran, depending on future events. Such is the world we live in. So just some information there for you on the FPV drones and a recent update from the Israeli Air Force. Over the weekend, the Air Force and the Fire Brigade of the 91st Division struck more than 40 terrorist infrastructures and eliminated more than 10 terrorists from the Hezbollah terrorist organization who were operating near IDF forces in southern Lebanon. Among the infrastructures that were attacked, buildings used for military purposes from which terrorists of the Hezbollah terrorist organization operated, weapon storage facilities, a launcher, and additional infrastructures. The attacked infrastructures were used by terrorists of the Hezbollah terrorist organization to advance and carry out terrorist objectives against IDF forces operating in southern Lebanon. And as I finished recording, a dramatic story coming out of southern Lebanon today. This is from Emmanuel Fabian. He is a military correspondent for the Times of Israel. 3 IDF soldiers were lightly injured in a Hezbollah explosive drone attack in southern Lebanon this morning. The troops were taken to a hospital and their families were notified. And adding to this, an Israeli Air Force helicopter that was dispatched to evacuate troops wounded in a Hezbollah drone attack in southern Lebanon earlier today got stuck due to a technical malfunction, the military says. The IDF says the chopper landed in southern Lebanon but was unable to take off again. Another helicopter was then dispatched to take the 3 wounded soldiers to a hospital. The military says the helicopter was not hit by enemy fire and the malfunction was technical. Israeli Air Force technicians managed to fix the issue and the helicopter later took off safely from the area. So thankfully no casualties here, but a dramatic story coming out of southern Lebanon today. So just a few updates there on Israel and southern Lebanon and some information on these FPV drones, and also just another example of how the battlefield is changing. If you've watched my previous videos on why I believe the Ezekiel 38 war must happen soon, it is because of how modern warfare is changing and how we will fight wars in the future. Highly recommend you check that video out if you haven't. But otherwise, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. God bless, and I will chat to you later.